Hello and welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I am a co-host, Alan Berkson. I'm the Director of Community Outreach for Fresh Desk, and I'm joined as always by Jonathan Yarmis, aka Dr. Disruptive. The doctor is in the house.
Greetings, Alan. How are you doing? Not well. Oh.
I got a cough. We'll see if I can make it through. You're probably going to have to do most of the talking today. Oh, wait.
yeah, Manasthana.
Right. We're here the second Friday of every month. We are here in beautiful downtown Stamford, Connecticut. It actually is a beautiful day out, if quite cold.
Yes, if you define beautiful as temperatures heading, they're talking about it over the weekend. We may get a record low.
Record low.
Yeah, global freezing, sub-zero.
See, it's this whole global warming thing is just a farce.
Yeah. Whoever called it global warming instead of climate change really harmed a generation of progress.
Al Gore, isn't it all? Everything Al Gore, right?
Yeah, and the internet.
And the internet.
Although the interesting thing about that, I was at an event some years ago and somebody kind of made light of the Al Gore invented the internet thing, and Vince Cerf, who really deserves considerable amounts of credit for actually inventing the internet, said no, and stood up for Gore and said actually his work, in the government in terms of supporting funding and so on was instrumental, that if not for Gore, we may not have the internet as we know it today.
So look at that. Too bad that doesn't come out back then.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Maybe, is he going to endorse, or has he already endorsed Bernie Sanders?
Although we did lose a pioneer recently. Digital.
The internet, check your sources. Yes, I was guilty of posting that on Facebook and Twitter, and that may be where you saw it. Ken Olson, the digital, died 5 years ago.
You see, so you're a trusted source.
Yes.
You're a trusted source.
I did go back and disclaim it. Should I delete my message?
I didn't go back and see your disclaimer.
Yes, I know. That's why I'm saying, should I have deleted it? But no, I posted something without noting the date line, said it was February 2011. So it's the 5th anniversary of the passing of Ken Olson, chairman of Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, which invented the mini computer.
I'm not laughing at Ken Olson.
Yes, no, and he's got a really interesting legacy. He invented a whole category of computing, democratized, mainframe computing, if you will, with the mini computer.
My first job out of college was a fax operator.
Yeah, when I was Hamilton College, we time shared into the Cornell mainframe, which, amazingly enough, was like a 64K computer that they're time sharing with. And Hamilton had a PDP-8 upgraded to a PDP-11. Yeah, right. They had a PDP-8 initially. But so, Ken Olson invented that whole category of computers, but also famously said he didn't understand why anybody would need a personal computer. Oops. Yeah.
Here we go, right here, personal computer.
Yeah, very personal.
So, this is going to be tough. In the news, earnings for tech companies have been taken a big hit.
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Although it's a good day today, apparently, in the market for tech.
But let's talk about a couple of them. One of them is one of our favorites, which is Twitter.
Yeah.
And we've talked many times on this show about what business is Twitter in, what's the value proposition, how do they continue, how do they make money, and it's sad that they don't know.
Not only is it sad that they don't know, but to me, it's blindingly obvious the problems they've got and the opportunities they've got. And I don't understand why they continue to do massive numbers of things that have nothing to do with what their real core value proposition. And so what is that real core value proposition?
That was the question.
Yeah. Since you can't talk, you just move your lips and I'll do my
ventriloquist.
Yeah, I was trying to think who's the guy, Jeff Dunn.
Okay.
Yeah. I kill you. Yeah, get it. So anyhow, so what is Twitter's core value proposition? And I think what they really are is a real-time information infrastructure. That they connect people and sources, content creators with consumers of content with a real-time distributed network, that enables all sorts of fascinating kinds of connections. It's infrastructure. The challenge always with infrastructure is how do you monetize it? And that's where Twitter, in some ways, I think has gone down, an unfortunate path. So what are potential sources of of monetization? And I gave away answer number one is monetization and is advertising. Right. And Twitter has elected to go down that path in a big way, in a way that I think is unfortunate for the platform itself, because there are several other ways of monetizing that I think A, could prove more lucrative, and B, are better aligned with their strengths. One of them could be user kinds of fees. And you could have a freemium model where certain people get things for free, and then there are advanced services and capabilities for which they could charge. And there's certainly a percentage of the user population that's so reliant on it that we could imagine premium services for which we would pay.
I've always said I'd pay $10 a month. That wouldn't be too much.
Yeah, not at all. You look at the things we pay for, and the whole subscription model is something that's underappreciated. We now pay subscriptions for video content. We pay it for audio content for our streaming music. Right. There are a whole bunch of things.
For software.
For software, for razor blades, $1 shave.
I have to say software.
Yeah, software. The Dollar Shave Club.
Right.
I pay it for my car wash company. I pay them $25 a month for unlimited external wash.
You pay it for you pay it for your car.
Yes.
A lease is a subscription.
Yes, and I pay it for the music in my car,
right.
Sirius XM. There are a whole bunch of things for which subscription fees can prove lucrative. Equally importantly, we're starting to see in this era of big data that there's massive value in data, and it requires a business at scale to be able to make money on the data. And Twitter has the potential, well, they're already a business at scale, although there are troubling signs. Their user count is flat. One of the things, they deny it, but an independent party has argued that the volume of tweets going through the platform is down precipitously. And this is one of those things where I think they've lost their way, because could they be an interesting IoT, Internet of Things infrastructure, where it's not only people tweeting things, but devices, things tweeting into the network. But the things Twitter has done and messed around with the feed.
I think if they set up a Internet of Things they've had pets tweet, but I think that would be really following your pet's Twitter feed, yeah.
Yes, but there are all sorts of things, but now they're messing around with the feed. So they're saying maybe it ought not to be sequential, but rather algorithmic. Let's present things that are important to us. Getting away from their core value proposition, and I think it was just yesterday or today, the London Underground, the subway system, the tube in London.
Mind the gap.
Yes, and look the opposite. For those of us in the States, if you're used to looking one way for the train coming, no, it's coming from the other direction, or the vehicle. Thankfully they painted on road surfaces. Anyhow, the Underground announced that with Twitter's algorithmic changes, they are no longer going to be tweeting regular train delays, because if the customer can't get it in real time, it is of no value. So they'll tweet major outages, but the regular outages, since users won't necessarily get it in real time, not only is the information not timely, it in fact has the potential to be inaccurate, jeopardizing the credibility of the information source.
So we've talked about a couple of times about how when Twitter shut down their API, they took a lot of the innovation up, and we've also talked about the ridiculously poor out-of-the-box experience that you get from Twitter. But what they're failing to do is differentiate the experience based on the user. And so what they're saying is, instead of having varied experience, you want a real-time feed, you get a real-time feed. You want a curated feed, we'll give you a curated feed. They're just dumbing it down.
Yes.
and trying to be Facebook.
Yes, and which is a ridiculous competition. You know, that ship sailed a long time ago, but there are things, when they shut down the API, the harm they did out of that one was so huge, because you're right, it completely stifled innovation. They stopped innovating. You know, the advances that have come from them, you know, in terms of tools, in terms of user experience, have been, you know, virtually zero. And now that they've, you know, Jack Dorsey has come out and said, we want to court developers again. You know, they're, you know, once bitten, twice shy. It's like, okay, you know, I hear your message. I see what's going on with your user count, your stock price, your board of directors and everything. Do I believe that's an enduring strategy, or it's something you're doing now and next quarter when you've got problems, you'll shut us down again?
Right.
You know, and I think they need to come out and with some real and durable, enforceable way of saying, we want the third-party community, we'll figure out ways to enable your businesses, and we'll share in the economic benefits of those things in a non-onerous way. You know, look at what Apple does with the App Store. You know, the App Store, they take a third of the revenues.
Right.
You know, and because they've got a great audience. You know, if you're an app developer, you got to swallow hard, but you agree to those terms. Twitter's got a great audience, and if they came up with some reasonable revenue share, access kinds of things.
How much time do you spend on the native Twitter interface versus a third-party tool like Hootsuite?
Negligible. You know, it's probably 98-2.
And therein lies the challenge itself. Ironically, I saw a tweet yesterday that talked about, that said, the value of Twitter is being determined by people who don't use Twitter.
Yes. Oh, there's a lot of that, which is both threat and opportunity. You know, that's one of the things I think Twitter has belatedly figured out, that there are a whole bunch of people who aren't native Twitter users that they can figure out ways to monetize. So it's not just us active users, but a broader community of people who might see tweets that if Twitter were able to, you know, effectively identify and market to those people, they've got an opportunity. But I think the advertising source of revenue is leading them down so many bad paths. They've got to figure out how to enable the ecosystem, share in the revenue, capitalize on the data, and focus on real time. And until and unless they do that, as well as improve the out-of-box experience, you know, richer set of tools. Oh, it sounds like a long laundry list of things, but they're all eminently feasible, but they don't go near this. What are they waiting for?
Well, I was going to ask you, you know, the board calls you up and says, doctor, we need you to come and take over Twitter. What's your, you know, your day one agenda? What's your 90-day agenda? What's your first year agenda?
My day one agenda is securing the agreement so that when they fire me in 90 days, I walk away with one of these golden parachutes. Yeah. Day two is the tools. You know, we've got to get developing tools that create a better out-of-box experience and a better experience for the power users.
So that's reopening the API to third parties?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. You know, and figuring out a way, not only opening the API to third parties, but how do we do things with the stream that enable people to get access to the stream in a way that they can build businesses on top of it that are economically sustainable to them and valuable to Twitter. You know, and that's something, you know, that's one of the behind the scenes things. You know, they used to, and I honestly am not totally familiar with how they still currently license it, but there were a few people who at high dollar volumes, they licensed the feed to. And those people, and those people were the ones who started to, you know, figure out how to, you know, build models for people who only wanted access to subsets of the stream.
Right, but they were always precipitate. They were always on shaky ground because they never knew when Twitter was going to change the rules on them.
Right. You know, and so the people doing it had problems, and the people who wanted to build businesses on top of those streams couldn't necessarily rely on it. You know, I think it's just Twitter's got to do things that commit to these people that building a business is in fact a viable, sustainable, long-term thing, and that Twitter won't pull the rug out from under them. Now, that said, a buddy of mine, Sean Bohan, is fond of saying, "He who lives by the API dies by the API." And forever is a long time, but I think Twitter's got to commit to things that say, yeah, go build the businesses. If you start building the next billion-dollar business and so on, we may revisit the economic platform, but they've got to give people faith to do it, because otherwise, as a pure infrastructure provider, they're not going to make the money.
Right.
I don't know about you. My tweet volume is way down because the shortcomings of the platform are really beginning to manifest itself. And when the early Twitter champions start abandoning the platform, and they're not getting net new growth,
Right.
that's they're a Yahoo.
Speaking of which, wow.
Wow, you picked up on my cue there.
Nice transition. So speaking of companies that don't know what business they're in, or even if they're in business.
Yeah.
Yahoo.
I find them another fascinating company. I don't know, remember the first time.
I still have a Yahoo email account.
I do too. It's great for when you need to give that an email address somewhere that they're going to spam you. So you give them an email address.
I think mine is like
_1998
.com or something like that.
Yeah, that's the advantage of being the only Jonathan Yarmis. In fact, the only Yarmis with the first initial J. You can send an email to J Yarmis at just about any email provider, and the chances are, A, I've got an account there, and B, it's mine. But Yahoo. I've found it amusing for years and years and years as they've had the debate, are we a media company or are we a technology company?
Is that debate really, isn't it settled?
To you, to me, more and more media companies, I think, are recognizing that they need to be technology companies. More and more technology companies are dabbling in the media space. But Yahoo seems stuck, A, in the debate, B, in the past, that they still talk about page views and eyeballs, even though we've long ago realized that their ability to monetize these things has been non-existent. They've gone back and forth, do we need to have our own search technology? Do we license it to Google? Oops, we did that, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. And Marissa Meyer's come in, and it's one of those things, she's an easy target to pick on from the perspective that she's on about her third or fourth turnaround plan. And what happens, I guess, on the fourth turnaround plan, you're still facing where you were going in the first place.
Right.
The turnaround plan, it's like, oh, I'm going off a cliff, let's turn around, and head somewhere different. And, I don't see a clear and compelling vision, even while there are a whole bunch of properties they've got. I still look at my Yahoo page.
You do.
Yeah, not nowhere. That used to be the first thing. That was, my
but how many people get a new My Yahoo page?
Yeah, almost none. But I still think if you go back to the original value of Yahoo, what did they begin as? They began as a catalog. They weren't even a search. Before we really did much in the way of search, we wanted to find a website. You wanted to go to travel. You went to Yahoo's directory, looked up travel, and they had links to the various travel sites. And that made sense when there were dozens or hundreds of websites. As the internet got bigger, the notion of a catalog,
right,
declined in value to just a smart Google search. And let's not underestimate the job. it's easy to think of Google as all they do are index web pages, but there's a lot of intelligence into what they present when they present those search results, the net being, when's the last time you went to the second page on a web search? Yeah.
Second page sucks.
Yeah.
That's like, that's the search engine optimization mantra.
Yeah, and so you get what you want on the first page, but I still think there are opportunities for people to better identify and find what's going on out there. That Yahoo's just squandered things. They talk about how, mobile's going to be our salvation, ignoring the fact that everybody jumped on that bandwagon 5 years ago. If they had said that 5 years ago, that might have been, wow, we could be ahead of this one. But they're consistently way late behind trends in fashions that are not compelling. And the net result being, I fully expect, and I'm not a stockbroker, in fact, don't listen to my stock trading advice at all. But at some point they make sense, with Verizon, with their new content and advertising plays and so on.
Right.
Or some traditional media companies that's shown a better job to monetize, but that Yahoo's days as an independent company are probably numbered, and the only thing holding it back from them, there are two companies. I've almost made a living of talking to John Swartz, a reporter at the technology editor at the USA Today, talking about dysfunctional boards.
Oh yeah.
And it's Yahoo and HP.
I could picture our conversation in Bryant Park.
Yes.
On the HP's dysfunctional board.
Yeah. And this is one of those things, how Facebook says, you've got memories from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. All of my memories from those times are on dysfunctional HP and Yahoo boards. And the saga continues.
Well, speaking of ads, that's my transition. The Super Bowl was last week. It's not really technology, but it's user experience. It's who gets it. It's old world. It's new world.
Did you watch this? You watched it alone with your family, right?
Yes.
Yes. And how is it I know that? Because I ended up watching it alone because Super Bowl parties still exist. But it used to be, the reason why we went to a Super Bowl party was it was a great social experiment,
right,
and an experience. Now there are certain things, and this reflects my deep and twisted use of technology, but the social experience of watching a Super Bowl, an Emmy, a Tony, or what have you.
A debate,
yes, is a much more interesting and rich and varied experience when my community is my TweetDeck panel as compared to talking with 3 people in a cocktail party with bad food and too much booze and so on. The social experience of these mass events is a really interesting phenomenon.
Look, it used to be you watch the game. Then it became you watch the game and the commercials. Now I watch the game, the commercials, and my social feed.
Yes. And the social feed is probably 80% about the commercials and 20% about the game, if that.
I was talking about the fact that Peyton Manning actually threw the ball 15 yards.
Without his arm falling off.
Right.
Yeah. So should he retire?
His boss did it, although his boss won 2 in a row.
Yes.
Nothing like going out on top, but very few professional athletes know when it's retire.
Yeah, they always stay a year too long. The last memory of Willie Mays, 73 with the Mets, was not a pretty one.
So what was your favorite Super Bowl?
I really like the Audi R8 with the David Bowie music and the space reference, and part of it is I've got significant car lust for that car.
Right.
And my least favorite was it
Monkey, whatever.
Monkey, puppy, baby, and
puppy, monkey, baby.
Yeah.
That was just fun.
Yeah.
The musical.
But the good news from their perspective, I know it was for Mountain Dew, Yeah.
Yep.
So they got the brand impression, and you know, I don't remember the name, but still one of the most effective radio commercials I ever heard was in about 1971. I was looking at colleges and was in St. Louis looking at Washington University, and this radio commercial came on, and I have forgotten the name of the dealership, although it being 45 years ago, you might understand why. But the whole commercial, a minute, was so-and-so for your motorcycle, so-and-so, excuse me, for your motorcycle. And for an entire minute, they just repeated the name of the dealer for your motorcycle, so-and-so for your motorcycle. And again, I've forgotten the name of the dealer, but 45 years later, the thing still occupies too many brain cells.
It's like Crazy Eddie.
Our prices are insane.
Now, for me, my favorite one was the Doritos one with the sonogram.
Yes, that was a good one too.
And not only was it clever and it made me laugh out loud, but they've been so consistent with their brand.
Yes.
In terms of that.
Yes, and that, if I'm not mistaken, they did 3 commercials in the Super Bowl. Those were all user-generated ideas and commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, they had some contest and picked 3 commercials, and I believe those all 3, you know, I mean, that was user-generated at its finest, and they, you know, and had great creative ideas. Crowdsource your creative. You know, I think they get a lot of credit for that one. And I also love the ad from the perspective. It's funny, you know, just a personal note. When my son was in utero, my ex was older, so we were going in for the amniocentesis test. And they put the needle in to draw some of the fluid out. And we're watching on the ultrasound, and they put the needle in, and my son started to reach for it. And the technician had to draw it back out. She put it in and he started reaching for it. And we're there, it's like, is he really reaching for it? And she's there, oh yeah, you know, he'll sense the motion or something. And it took several pokes before he didn't reach for it, where we were able to really neat thing. So I watched that commercial and it's like, yeah.
Doritos.
Yeah.
So now talk about companies that have lost their shine a little bit. Apple is no longer the most valuable tech company in the world.
Yeah, you know, depending upon the day of the week right now, but you know, Google had a great quarter. Not only a great quarter, this splitting out the core business from the rest of the moonshot pieces, you know, with Alphabet and Google and so on, has given investors greater transparency into the Google search business, and they've discovered that business is still going along really well. You know, that it exhibits continued growth, and while, you know, we've seen this Java Oracle lawsuit, you know, shine some light on the search business. In fact, you know, what is it? Google's paying Apple around $1 billion a year to be the search engine. $1 billion. You know, pretty good. Yeah.
And they're doing that because they know they're going to make money on it.
Yes. Yes, you know, but so Google's doing well in its core business. You know, there are times, you know, for a long time with Google, I've said that they're a one-trick pony, but damn, is that a good trick?
It's a good trick.
Yeah, it's a really good trick.
So,
yeah. And they understand their core business. Unlike a lot of other people, Google has relentlessly executed against that core vision, even while all these other things, you know, seemingly are distractions, but obviously not impacting the core business. But Apple, you know, by contrast, you know, this is one of the things where the old Apple model for a period of time, and I'm not going to give this all, you know, they've lost their way without Steve Jobs. Or
I was going to say,
yeah, you know,
that's a whole different.
Yeah, that's a lengthier and more nuanced discussion. But Apple's success in many ways was products have kind of a life cycle at some point. You know, you introduce a new product, a new category, define the category, and at some point you go from penetrating new markets to a replacement market. And when it becomes a replacement market, it's less interesting, even while in the cell phone space, it's still interesting because unlike desktop computers, for instance, where you hold on to one for 4 or 5 years, you flip a phone on average every 21 months or so. So even the replacement business is good, but it's an old business when Apple used to keep introducing new products that were big hits that would reinvigorate growth. We're waiting, how long has the iPhone been around now? I honestly don't. 7 years, 8 years?
It's got to be more than that because we're up to iPhone 8, 7? What are we up to?
7. Yeah.
But every other year they came out with the S model. So
yeah, but it's somewhere in that range. Yeah. And so we had the tablet that came along and was a decent product line extension, but not the killer product. Then we had the watch, which was less interesting, and each successive product introduction from Apple has been less interesting than the iPhone before. Now, admittedly, that is a tough comparison, but Apple's often been the category definer and owner and miner of profits. And the last few products have not identified that. There are some things that I think are clear opportunities for Apple. I blogged about this some years ago, that the home automation market is such an obvious candidate for Apple to.
We talked about it here on the show a year ago.
Yeah, and yet I saw an interview on Bloomberg TV a couple of months back with Tony Fadeli, the CEO of Nest, talking about why he eventually sold the company to Google, not Apple, even though he had come from Apple. And the damning thing he said was his vision of where things were going was more aligned with Google than with than anything Apple presented to him. And that to me is, how could this possibly be? That Apple used to be, should be, can be, must be the company of these grandiose visions. Google does these moonshots, but is really a much more pragmatic company, a follower, and so on. And the fact that he saw greater vision from Google and Apple in the home space troubled me as much as anything I've heard in terms of the latest quarter and earnings results and directions.
So we were talking before the show about how I left the light on, the cabin light on in my car. And more and more for me, my expectation is that I want my things that I own to tell me when there's a problem.
Yes.
Why wouldn't my car tell me I left the light on?
Right.
So that whole, in my house, why wouldn't it tell me, hey, this pipe's getting too cold, it's going to freeze. This is what I was thinking about this morning as I was driving up, because I know when it gets really cold, there's a chance that the pipes will freeze in my house.
Yes.
It's just a fact. End up putting a heater near or whatever. But I should know what I expect. Feedback from my environment and alerts and notifications and monitoring.
Yes, although I think one of the interesting challenges we have out of this, and this is something we probably ought to devote a whole show to at some point. What does it mean to be in a software-defined world? We were talking before the show, with one of our guests, about the growing importance of software compared to all else. In a software-defined world, and this applies to autonomous cars, to home automation, all sorts of things. How smart is that software going to be? So there was a recent problem, I mentioned Nest, with Nest thermostats, where it wouldn't let people turn up the heat. It's like, no, I want to turn up the heat. No, I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave. And having software control things is a fascinating situation. Autonomous cars. Google talks about the safety of their autonomous cars and how they haven't caused any accidents. Cause is an interesting definition. They've been involved in, I think the statistics are something like 20x the number of accidents.
Right.
And while they've not caused them by any strict definition, an analysis of why they've been in all these accidents is they behave differently than we expect them to behave. We see a yellow light. What do?
Hit the accelerator.
Yes. What does that car do? It hits the brakes. So if you're following and you're expecting them to go through.
I just thought about taxi when what's his name? Reverend Jim is taking his driver's test. And he says, "What do you do when you get to a yellow light?" And everybody goes, "Slow down." And he goes, what?
Yeah, yeah. You know, I remember, a real life incident. I was traveling a Gartner sales call, and we were somewhere deep in the South in a town in Mississippi. It was something like Loxahatchee, but it was longer than that. And the guy I was with, we stopped for lunch at a Dairy Queen, and he asked the lady, what's the name of this place, and can you say it slowly? And she went, Dairy Queen. It took us about 3 minutes to get up off the floor and explain, no, that's not what we were looking for.
But there's an interesting piece about IoT, and maybe this is because I'm old school. When I was in the IT business, there's always a challenge between monitoring and alerts and automation. You want to be able to fix things quickly, and so you want to set up automation to self-healing networks, stuff that would automatically, you're running on disk space, automatically extend the partition, whatever it is. But at the same time, that would become a problem if the automation ran into a situation it didn't understand or it was out of scope. So for me, it was always about alerts. So I say, do I want the car to automatically turn the light off or just to let me know that it's on?
Right.
Because maybe I want to leave it on.
Yeah.
Or my heat, normally it would go down at night, but if it's going to be 6 degrees outside, I want to keep it up, not because I need to keep it warm enough to keep my pipes from freezing. So there's these exceptions that make it harder to manage, and it's the same thing with cars, the automation.
Yeah, and this has always been the challenge of rule-based systems and so on, is there are a whole set of rules I have for a whole bunch of things I do that I could never, ever, explicitly lay out all the rules that I go through and all the exceptions and so on. But I do all of those things naturally. I'm thinking about cars, in the self-driving car. There are things. My ex always used to be amazed. I'd go, that guy's going to cut me off. And sure enough, he would. And she's there, how do you know that? And it's like, I'm looking at him, looking in his mirrors. I'm seeing small twitches in the wheel, things based on all of my experience and learning, that how would a car system know that, and if we're all self-driving and we're all communicating with each other and we've got intelligence, all of that kind of stuff. The perfect vision of how that works is great. We'll have efficiency, Connecticut, where we haven't had, major road construction in 50 years, even while, probably more than that, even while volumes have increased considerably, where rush hour, which used to be kind of like 7 to 10, is now 6 till all afternoon through the afternoon.
I'm going to hit that traffic when I try to get home.
Yeah. And would a great intelligent network of communicating cars be a wonderful vision of how that would work in a perfect world? Yes. I find myself in the very unusual place, because I'm normally the world's biggest, technology cheerleader. I haven't met a technology that I haven't liked. Autonomous cars, I think, is a silly chase that is going to disappoint for a decade or more, and that we're actually better off investing in intelligent highways and support structures rather than intelligent devices, intelligent cars. That we get a much greater payback, that it would be, that there's often a problem too, that autonomous cars are, a seemingly great vision, but until we get to a critical mass, and that's a significant number of them,
right,
their value would be compromised. It's kind of the installed base versus new market opportunity. And oftentimes you're better off selling into solutions that work well with the installed base. It's one of my greatest calls as an industry analyst related to that. When Microsoft was flogging NT, that ran moderately well on the newest hardware, but didn't run well on the installed base of 100 million, whatever the installed base was at the time. I said, no, it's not going to be NT. This thing I posited as NT Lite. became Windows 95, won the market because it could sell to and add value to the installed base, not the leading edge of shipments. And I think autonomous cars is going down that same failed path.
There's a meme going around the internet with the dance party from the Windows 95 launch.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
The videos going around.
Yeah, but I mean, little thing in my neighborhood, there's a three-way intersection and traffic light, and there are a lot of times of the day when there are almost no cars there, and you're sitting there waiting for the light to cycle through. They've recently replaced it or enhanced it with sensors that tell at which part of the intersection cars are waiting. And if there's nobody in the other two legs and I drive up to the third leg, it gives me a green light.
Right.
Massive improvement in efficiency in vehicular flow, saving gas that even at under $2 a gallon is still a nice thing to do.
Well, even human nature. Somebody in traffic is like the most complicated system, or complex actually, system. Somebody hits their brake and the impact is like the butterfly effect.
Yes.
And they hit their brake not because it's a rational thought because they need to slow down, but it's something in their head says, I've got to slow down, and then that has a ripple effect. And
the other network effect of that is now, I use Waze, and I love Waze. It's for those of you not familiar with it,
Waze, W-A-Z-E.
Yep.
Waze.
It's a GPS application created by some Israelis, sold a couple of years ago, a year ago to Google. That the way it monitors traffic is when I've got the app running, it knows how fast I am, it knows where I am, it reports all that information back. So it's got this amazing network of real-time information, and they've in fact partnered with other sources of information to enhance the value of their real-time information. Now, an interesting problem arises out of this. In the old days,
they sell your driving habits to the insurance companies.
Yeah, not that. Although, let me divert a second. There's a company whose business exists. They drive around photographing license plates and geotagging them. They've accumulated several billion images. It's publicly available information. Nothing. You're driving. They snap it, and they're selling that information to whoever wants to buy it. A lot of law enforcement, if you're looking for, a car that's, that they've got this incredible database. The
proverbial APB.
Yeah, just taking pictures of cars. So I could imagine insurance companies, why did you drive that car in that high risk area? And Waze, that'll be the issue too. But the interesting thing about Waze, and I think where we're going with traffic, I liken it to the old days when we had radio reports. And here in the New York metro area, there are a couple of radio stations that do traffic every 10 minutes. And what happens if you listen to the traffic report and they go, the Whitestone Bridge is, jammed up, go to the Throgs Neck.
Right.
The first time I heard that report, I definitely go to the Throgs Neck. The second time I heard the report, I'd probably go to the Throgs Neck. By the third time I heard the report, it's like, okay, it's probably a little out of date. A lot of people have listened. The Throgs Neck's now actually going to be backing up. I'll go over the Whitestone. And in fact, the Whitestone is cleared up. The Throgs Neck is, and the time value of the information, led me to actually be contrarian and go the opposite direction. I think Waze, as things like that get more and more pervasive, we're going to have some balancing algorithm. So I don't want to send everybody to the Throgs Neck, but let me send 2/3 of the people there, 1/3 of the people to the Whitestone until the traffic, and these intelligent network systems.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, then you could pay for better access so that you're going to get the first notification as to the best route.
Yes.
So if I pay a higher subscription rate,
yes,
I'm going to get first notification as opposed to everybody else.
And there's precedent for that. You go to Houston and there's the tollway and the interstate, and they're basically parallel. If you want to pay for your private access to the road, you can get it. So there are all sorts. It's not an unprecedented monetization scheme, but I think we're going to want to do that as these systems become more pervasive, because the existing
But you're a net neutrality guy. This is
No, well, yeah, I'll argue about it. It depends, the interesting pricing algorithms, that if we contribute to a world of haves and have-nots, where that
surge pricing on traffic reports.
Yeah, not a crazy idea, but we'll want that, because right now Waze presumably sends all of us the same way based on its real-time traffic information, and it has the potential to start skewing the traffic, producing the same way. The Vegas line is trying to balance money on both sides.
Right.
Yeah, you want to balance traffic on the alternatives so that we've all got a good experience. That's the greater social benefit rather than the existing model which is I have better access to technology and information, I get a better experience. Societally, I think we'd want to balance out the traffic experience.
Bernie Sanders would be proud. All right, let's get into some of our monthly features. The shame on you, I have to bring up only because I saw you, I don't know if you put it on Facebook or whatever, your car experience. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's one of the worst, that's one of the most annoying things about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about
This is a shame on you.
Yes, I'm thinking about a new car. And, it's a shame because probably while I haven't given it an app I love or a service I love, TrueCar, I generally think they're an amazing service. It's scary to think of as recently as 15 or so years ago, about half of all cars were sold at sticker price because people didn't know they could negotiate for the price of a car, and it was such a distasteful experience. Anyhow, along comes TrueCar and it says, okay, what are people actually paying cars at? You went and negotiated a good deal. That information has made it into their network somewhere along the way. And they'll share the fact that now hundreds of thousands of us, here are cars that with incentives, what have you, a good price for this car is $26,000, not $30,000. And TrueCar, it's done a great job of getting that information. And in fact, if you hate the haggle process, you can go in to a dealer and say, who's signed up with TrueCar. TrueCar says, here's the price. You can go in the dealer and get that price. When my son bought his,
I'm looking to buy a car.
Yeah, when my son bought his car, he negotiated with the dealer. When he got to a price, I looked up the TrueCar price, and the TrueCar price was several $100s less. And I showed the guy that and he goes, okay. So the negotiation only got us so far, and tried all the tricks, getting ready to walk out and, all of that kind of stuff, and got to a price and then looked it up on TrueCar.
So what? All right. So
what they did.
The gotcha.
I was pricing cars and thought all I was doing was looking at dealers that were TrueCar partners and would give me that pricing and inventory. I do not recall clicking something that said, please spam me by every vehicle, every means at your disposal. I'm getting emails, text messages, phone calls. Yeah, every form of electronic communication, and I'm sure I registered those with TrueCar, and I'm willing.
It was probably in the terms of.
Yeah. You click agree, and who knows what we're agreeing to. But text messages, increasingly strident emails. I've tried calling you. It's like, wow, I didn't intend to do this. The last thing in the world I want to do is invite car dealers to harass me. It's bad enough that I've got to deal with them in their environment. Calls, text messages, emails.
That's the worst.
I'm waiting for the knock on my front door. That's next. Yeah. TrueCar, make it really clear that you're inviting that level of intrusion, because I don't recall saying, please harass me.
Terms of service. Actually, I saw really interesting. Did you see Google's gaming platform? They launched, it was Google, and in their terms of service, there was something about a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. If you've read this, Larry Page will give you $1 million.
Click here. All right, interesting factoid.
So the FAA has required people to register drones. At some level, I'm surprised that people are being so compliant with this.
But there's no Second Amendment that relates to drones.
Yes, yeah, but I haven't seen the drone enforcement police yet, but over 400,000 people have registered their drones with the FAA. This is going to be, there are so many things that are the full employment act.
Training birds to attack drones. Where was that?
I don't know.
I think I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know that they need to train them. I would imagine for some of them it's a natural instinct. Yeah. It's a natural instinct. But anyhow, 400,000 drones. It's almost as popular a platform as the hoverboards. Has yours caught on fire yet?
I don't know. All right.
And my San Francisco friends are probably aware of this, but while we're still waiting for the death of unicorns and we're having issues with Twitter and stuff like that, there's enough good going on in the Bay Area between Facebook and Google and a vibrant startup community and so on, that San Francisco office rents are now larger than those in New York. The average San Francisco rent was just short of $73 a square foot, where last year, the same corresponding period in New York, it was just $72 a square foot. Congratulations, San Francisco.
More expensive than New York. That's great. Manhattan, let's be clear.
Yeah, well, Brooklyn's probably for housing anyhow.
Yeah. All right, we can't only complain, we have to give kudos. You have one of our favorite whipping posts.
Yeah, I every once in a while I have to say nice things about the cable companies. And Cablevision, my provider, even while, my biggest pet peeve in life, perhaps, our favorite whipping boy, Jim Dolan, owner of the Knicks and Rangers, and, one of the most offensive, horrible owners in sports. His cable company, actually, I found their support to be pretty good. And during the Super Bowl, we kind of laugh about cable speeds, and you like the Verizon Fios half fast.
Still like it.
And I
still love it.
I don't, but my old-fashioned prudish ways, I think, curse words lose their impact and are too prevalent. And we've seen, just in the media in the last couple of days, people attacking, his competitors attacking Donald Trump for his cavalier use of language. That aside, and the fact that who cares if my upload speed is half my download speed, because unless you're moving huge video files, it doesn't really matter what your upload speed is.
It's like the drug companies inventing a disease one week and then carrying it the next.
Yes. All that aside,
it's a non-problem.
I ran my speed test on the day of the Super Bowl, and instead of my 50 meg download speed, I was getting 8 meg down and about 20 meg up.
I had the same thing, and I was on fire. It's just
too many people using the internet. Yes, and they don't tune the network for those kinds of things. But anyhow,
another argument for non-net neutrality. If I want to get my stuff, I want to pay for the. I'm kidding.
Yeah. We'll let that one go. But anyhow, so in the old days, you sat there and groused to yourself and complained to your friends, and now you tweet about things. So I tweeted about things, and admittedly several hours later, but nonetheless, I got a tweet back from Cablevision support asking me to, call them, provide them with my details, and they look into the problem. Now, I understand that in certain instances, if I want to take away their responsiveness, one of the things I know that there are a lot of vendors out there who use clout or other. There's a certain clout with a K that scores your social media presence. And the fact that I got a response, your results may vary. You know, that,
Right.
that they pick and choose, and it's like, ooh, he's got a high cloud score. Let's deal with his issue. Nobody did that better than Comcast. And is it your event that you've got Frank Eliason speaking?
Got Frank coming to speak, yeah.
Yeah, ask him about that one, because I think, you know,
Mark-
Comcast did a brilliant job of having the influential experience being great, even while 99.99% of the customers still had a sucky customer experience. That 0.01% would say, wow, you know, look what a great job Comcast is doing. So
Right.
they pick and choose
And
their
influencers would make
favorites.
a lot of noise saying how great they were.
Yeah, you know, so I don't know whether this is just Cablevision's general practice or I'm one of the favored few, but I thought they had a decent response, you know, and even if not exactly on point, they responded as compared with TrueCar. When I tweeted about what happened here, I'm still waiting for their response.
Well, I'll take a moment for a shameless plug. Frank Eliason will be headlining a Fresh Desk Customer Happiness Store stopping in Westchester on March 16th. That'll be Frank Eliason and also Dan Moriarty, who's head of social and digital for Hyatt, who also happens to be a very responsive brand. I've had to use them. I ended up with like you saw my pictures from the suite.
It's amazing how good your voice got to be when all of a sudden there was a plug to be. Yeah, I'm getting suspicious now.
I've been
Outed.
No, I've been what do they call it when the
Sandbagging.
Yeah, we're not playing your game.
Yeah.
Holding back. I'm just pacing myself, Sergeant.
There's a reference there I think I'm missing.
That's from Stripes.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry.
Yes, I know.
I notice you're always last. I'm pacing myself. If in doubt, it's a Bill Murray movie.
Yes. Groundhog Day.
No, that was Stripes.
I know.
Oh.
Well, I'm just going with another, you know, since we recently had Groundhog Day, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Not bad for a quadruped. Don't drive angry. All right, let's finish up with our quote of the month.
You know, it's Valentine's Day coming up. For those of you who have forgotten, you still got 2 days, but you know, I was just trolling the internet. You know, when I look for the quotes of the month, you know, I do a Google search kind of thing, looking for relevant things. You know, last month we did Martin Luther King Day, and I came across a guy by the name of Robert Weiss, who's a social worker and the author of several books and a blog entitled Intimacy, Sex, and Addiction in the Digital Age. How do you get to, I'd love to study that professionally for a year, but all that aside, his quote was, today what you define to be a, quote, relationship mostly depends on your age. Basically, younger people typically don't require face-to-face interactions to feel known and intimately connected, while older people do. And this is one of the things I find that whole social interaction and connection phenomenon to be a really interesting one. And there are a lot of generational differences. And, you know, I think he's spot on in that one. You know, there'll be a lot of
how do you define a friend?
Yeah.
Is a friend someone that you've had interactions on Twitter and that they're a friend? Is a friend someone that you've met in person and you've developed, you know, what's a friend?
Yeah, you know, I met you via Twitter, and, you know, there was some form of friendship existed that before we were ever in the same place at the same time. We interacted with each other, found we had common interactions.
Common miseries.
I don't feel romantically.
Common misery.
Yes, you know. How many, you know, it's just a couple of days till pitchers and catchers report.
That's right.
You know, while it's going to be sub-zero here in the Northeast, the pitchers are going to be, you know, loosening up, and I'm excited for this.
I'm going to Vegas next week. I think I might put a couple of bucks down.
Yeah, you're not going to get great odds.
I know.
Yeah,
I think they're
yeah, isn't that nice? You're not going to get great odds.
Yeah, on the Mets to win. All right, so our next show will be March 11th. March 11th.
Is that what it says?
Second Friday.
Yes.
Second Friday of the month.
Friday of the month.
You've been watching Pardon My Disruption with Alan Berkson and Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmis. You want to continue discussion on PM Disrupt, hashtag PM Disrupt on Twitter. there's any topics that you'd like us to cover, or you want to, make fun of us, or any other.
That means you, Fred.
That means you, Fred. And so we'll see you next time.